This conference will now be recorded.
How you doing, sir? Bada bang bang yesterday. And ain't no overtime pay when it comes to family. I was gonna say you just get voluntold. Yeah. What do you looking for? That's not y'all. That's someone who's out here temporary. Three months? Yeah, exactly. Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, I left that in there, Maggie.
All right, it's about 7, so let's go ahead and get started, please. All right, you guys want to make sure your mics are on and so forth? Okay, we do have a quorum. We have all members of the Planning Commission present. We need to take a moment for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Okay, we need to take a look at the agenda and see if anyone wants to make any additions or changes to the agenda.
Motion, Mr. Chairman, we accept the agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, good. Take a minute to review the minutes from the June 21st, 2023 workshop meeting.
Recommend we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good. All right, we have 3 public hearings tonight. As always, we will go through each case. I'll read the case. Regan will provide us with any additional information and answer questions. The applicant will then have a chance to respond to the Planning Commission and answer questions or make statements. And following that, there will be time for public comment. As usual, we will ask that public comment be restricted to as close to 3 minutes as you can to allow time for everyone to speak. All right, case number SU-07-23-11. Mr. Troy Weaver has applied for a special use permit to operate an automotive repair shop on a 4.78 acre parcel which he owns. The subject parcel is zoned A1 agriculture, and in this zoning district, an automotive repair shop is allowable by special use permit. If approved, the applicant would construct a 60 by 60 metal framed building containing 3,600 square feet of interior floor area. This building would also contain a bathroom. The subject undeveloped parcel does not currently have a postal address, but is located on Shelby Road, Route 662, and is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 55-42A. Leaving anything to add there?
Yes, sir, thank you. Just a couple small things. The first is, if you look in the packet, I accidentally put the ad for last month's. I did advertise, what's on the agenda was advertised, and I have a certificate for that. So I just inadvertently put last month's ad when I was coordinating everything, so just FYI. Second thing is, if we could be sure, Bruce got on me the other day, to be sure we all talk into our microphones, just so everyone at home can hear. It also helps with transcribing the minutes afterwards, and even in the public, if you need to speak, come grab one of the microphones and be sure you speak. Planning Commission, just please be sure you speak in the microphone. Bruce made me say that, so anyway. On this one, I know we talked about it at the workshop last month. Not a lot has changed between now and then. Everything is still in place as far as the conditions. One of the questions that was asked, one of the planning commissioners was, would it be possible to maybe do the parking in the rear? And one of the issues with that is that right here, if you can see, is the well. That's roughly the spot of the well. So he needs to maintain 50 feet from that, and that's about 50 feet. But we might be able, here's a setback line, which is 100 feet. It's possible that he could move this up a little bit and still be 50 feet, and depending on this area, the drain field, we might be able to get parking in the rear, but that could be kind of flipped. But as I see it, I mean, he's just saying that 6 cars would be out overnight at any given time. Most of the cars would be inside, and with it buffered, there's existing trees here. We're going to plant this, make this enhanced. Hopefully, that into itself would take care of it. But if there is a possibility and there is some space, I don't think anyone would have any. I hope they don't think anyone would have any big problem if this parking was just sort of in the rear, and if we still have the buffering and everything. So that is a possibility that once he comes in for construction, we can talk about that. Other than that, you know, it's a garage, automotive repair, auto body at all. That is a by right, a special use in A1. He does understand that with the uses on the lot, that would be exhausted, the number of uses on this lot, and that seems to be okay with the applicant. Otherwise, I think what you see here is it's what you get, but I think that we've got a pretty good set of conditions that would just run with the applicant. And I'll just go to these, and they're in your packet. It would run with the applicant. That buffer, if it was to sell it, it would need to be, would need to have a new hearing. So I think we can be insured who we're working with on this. So other than that, any other questions for me?
Anyone have a question for Lee? All right, it looks like, apparently this is a fairly narrow piece of property, right? Because you're, to have your vegetative buffer and the drive entrance and the parking, it's kind of filling it up.
Yep. Mm.
It looks, with that existing well there, he wouldn't be able to swap the drain field area with the parking area and try to do that, I don't think, which is what you were discussing there. That well would be way too close to a drain field. Is the rest of this wooded in the back? That's what it looks like on here.
It is.
It
Mhm.
is, okay. And then there's a narrow wooded area in the front along the roadside.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other question for Lee? All right, would the applicant like to address the planning commission or answer any questions? Yeah.
I guess if anybody's got any questions, ask me. I'm willing to answer any one you got. Like the parking lot part, basically, definitely more parking than what I need. But being that we had the 50-foot setback from the road and from the well, it's back a little further than I wanted. But I ain't got no problem with where it's sitting at, and I don't think the parking part's going to be a problem as well. So, I mean, I don't think I'm going to have that many cars sitting outside anyway.
It looks like it's going to be screened from the highway pretty much anyway with the trees there in the front.
It's already trees right there at the highway.
Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Washington, so you're not concerned about 6 vehicles limiting your ability to service however much business you might get on the exterior?
At this point right now, like most of the vehicles I don't have, like where I'm at, is sometimes I got 10, but the shop I have right now is not big enough to hold but 4 vehicles. So I did my building so that I could have at least maybe 7, 8 cars in there. And most of the time I got 7, 8 cars anyway. But if I got them inside, I mean, it leaves me a lot of space to put a couple cars outside if I need to.
Yeah. Do you plan on hiring employees? I think you might have talked about that.
I'd
a
like
little
to.
bit. So, I mean, these things can get pretty junky pretty quick. I've seen, they're all over everywhere. But, and most of them, I'm just going to say, like, they've got more vehicles like that. If you're, you get an employee or 2 down the road or something, you grow, you do good work, and, you
It's
might.
right now, so I do most of the dealerships from Madison, a couple from Culpeper and Orange, but I kind of schedule everything in all at once because I got a couple guys that come in and help me in the evening time, so I kind of schedule everything in to where I don't hold nobody's vehicle that long at all, unless it's like somebody that I am doing for doing like an all-over paint job or something like that. Might have a little longer, but no more than 2 weeks. But most of the dealership cars, the longer I got it, the less they can sell it. So they want it, and they want it back.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
So, I don't guess, once again, we're gonna start doing this. I really think that, it'd be really nice somehow to figure out a way to get parking, these garages that we're gonna start approving, get parking behind behind the building, and I understand you got a well there that you got to work around, and I was just kind of, I didn't know that you had an existing well. So I'm kind of trying to look at that myself, but I guess you couldn't park 6 cars behind that in any way?
I could. I mean, so where it says gravel parking lot, in reality, that's kind of where I had the building at from the get-go.
Right.
So that's that's probably a 65 by 65 right there. So after the well was right there, we had to move the building 50 feet past that. So where I had the building, right, for the setback. So where I originally had it at, I don't know what I need to do with all that, but I guess I could use it for parking right there if we wanted to put it in the front or the back or the side, actually.
I don't think you'd have it on the sides though, because you're so narrow anyway.
Well, I think legally you can park on top of the drain field, not on top of the septic tank or distribution box, but I think you could allow to park on top of the drain field if you want to put something in the back. Is that correct, Ligon, or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be enough space. I think just when he comes in and get the building permit, we can look at it, and if we can get a large enough area back there, which I really think, then that will be the option we'll go for. But, we went out there and walked it and measured it and pulled a tape, and that well is right there, and we gotta go 50 feet. So it's in an area, like you said, that's where he wanted to put the building, and the parking would have been right behind it where the garage is. So I still think there's enough space, but,
I just drove by there and there seems to be a lot of room. I mean, it does fall in the back, on the way, I drove by there on the way here. It does fall in the back, but it doesn't fall drastically.
No, it doesn't. I actually had it leveled up at first because I thought I was gonna put my building right there where the gravel parking lot part was, but after the drain field situation, we moved it back another 50 feet. So there's really nothing up there.
And all your spare parts, because auto body places, they always have spare parts. That'll be behind the building as well.
Well, I probably have a shed where I can put all of my parts at, so I don't want to leave no parts outside anyway, because that's how they would probably end up missing. But I'll probably get a shed so I can put them parts in there to lock them up.
So you think you'll have another shed on here, big enough to put parts on?
I definitely have another shed on there. Be more like a storage shed, just to put stuff at, so that it ain't inside the shop, and then basically I can have it to where I can put a couple little things in there for whatever I'm gonna need it for. But most of the time, so when I'm working on cars, I actually figure out what car I'm working on. So when the car gets there, I already got the parts there, and I already got what I need to do to them. So when I get them, it ain't no extra time really to store them nowhere, because by the time the car get there, they need to be going on the car and then going out.
Any other questions? Thank you. All right, any public comment on this case? Yes, sir. You identify yourself and, again, try to stay within 3 minutes if you can, please.
My name is Ted Brame of Madison Motors here in Madison. I've known Troy Weaver for about 8 years. He provides a really unique service with quick repairs, short of a body shop. We sell 60 to 70 cars a month at Madison Motors. We need things done fast. Troy's an expert at doing, tailgates, fenders. He's not gonna have half of a car sitting out behind the body shop. He gets the cars in and out in 2 or 3 days. I used him at Edmonds Ford. He still works for the Ford dealership, which is Battlefield now, and some other dealerships. So he's just has a unique service that's short of a full-fledged body shop to get stuff in and out. He does excellent work. And we usually get our cars back in 2 or 3 days. So, and I know him personally, he's a great guy, so I guess that's about all I can say.
Okay. Thank you.
He's not Earl Shy.
That's a positive, yeah. Any other public comment? Any other public comment on this case? Thank you. That being the case, can I have a motion on this one?
What do you guys think we're gonna do with the parking lot and building and stuff in this recommendation, orientation of that stuff?
I would simply recommend that it be approved, I present it, but if, because we have to measure this out again and get this building, if we can, if staff determines that it can be moved in the back, then we'll move it in the back, all the parking. But I would just approve as presented with, let staff just figure out, because like I said, we'll have to see how close he can get when he gets his building plans in. And I really think it will be moved back there, so I would just simply approve as presented with potential to staff to approve moving in the back if we have enough space there, which I think we will.
Any other discussion?
Well, I'll just throw one other out since I'm going. I don't know what you guys think about just increasing it to maybe 10 or 12 vehicles and just give them a little room. There's not too many shops out here with 6 vehicles outside, just to keep them in compliance and give them some room.
Of course, this is overnight, you know, so
Yep.
Okay. So you're talking about overnight parking, so you're not talking about employees parking
No.
there?
they'd be leaving, so we wouldn't count those, right?
Just a thought. I'll let somebody make the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that case number SU-07-23-11 be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval as submitted, with the option in there when the county goes out with staff, and if they can move it around to make it a better situation, we do that.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So case number SU-07-23-11 will be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval, with the option that the staff will look at the situation, see if the parking can be put in the rear of the building. All right, case number RZ-07-23-12, Louth Callan Renewables has applied to rezone a 91.8 acre split zone B1 business and A1 agriculture parcel to develop a solar farm, AKA commercial solar energy facility. The subject parcel contains a roughly 11.6 acre portion along the entire frontage with US 29, which is zoned B1, and the balance of the parcel is zoned A1 agriculture. The request is to rezone the entire parcel to M1 limited industrial with conditions. M1C. The applicant has submitted a rezoning condition that would eliminate all by right M1 uses from future consideration unless a subsequent public hearing is held for their inclusion. The subject 91.8 acre parcel does not contain a postal address, but is located on South Seminole Trail, US 29, and adjoins the parcel where Yoder's Country Market is located. In addition, the parcel is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 48-12C. Regan, any additional information?
Sure. Where do I start? Yep, so I know this is, I think that the night is here when we're hopefully make a decision on this, and I know we've talked about it for on and off for a couple of years. I know the owners have said they've been in conversation, the owners of the property have been in conversations about this for even longer than that. Of course, this is, as I've stated before, 3 parts to this. We have the rezoning application, which would rezone the property, the 91 acres from B1A1 to M1 with conditions. You see the letter from Mr. Sylvester eliminating those by right uses from potential consideration. So the gist is that if this is rezoned, that anything else, M1 by right would need to come back to another public hearing. The second part would be the special use permit condition, the special use permit So if the rezoning is approved, then the next step would be to open a hearing and discuss and have a hearing and a discussion regarding the special use permit. The third part, which is just between the board and the Board of Supervisors and the applicant, is the siting agreement, which is that detailed document for 18, 19 pages that myself, staff, Jonathan, people on the Plan Commission, we've all sort of, Hannon and Sean, we've looked at with the applicant, and that obviously is in the packet. There is a lot of interplay between the siting agreement and the special use permit. Generally speaking, these agreements, the siting agreement, we did look at other communities, Sussex County, Charlotte County, Louisa County, and I think we've put together a siting agreement which I think sort of borrows a lot of things that have been practiced and tried and true. So I think we have a good siting agreement that's typical of what other communities have utilized. In the siting agreement, you will see a Schedule A. That is the capital payment. The applicant has offered to pay $100,000 a year capital payment. You'll see a Schedule B, which is the solar revenue sharing. That is the 1,400 per megawatt and a year that would be charged for the 16 megawatt facility. On top of that would also be, just a little side note, would be the real estate taxes. As you can see, I think I've distributed a spreadsheet. I won't pull it up right now, but you're looking at year one revenue somewhere around 130,000, slightly increasing every year going forward. One of the questions that came up was in the special use permit. You will see in the special use permit Exhibit A, which is the M1 proffer letter. This Exhibit B, that's the special use permit conditions, and then Exhibit C, which is the routing. I know this was talked about at the last meeting quite a bit, and I'll go ahead and pull down to that. And I've gone to the courthouse, talked to the applicant, had a conversation with at least one surveyor about this, just to sort of get an idea of, and this is this right here. This would be part of the special use permit if the rezoning is approved. Here are the two options to get to the Pratt substation. If you ride down here, you'll notice there are lines on this side. This is where the REC right-of-way, the existing right-of-way and existing poles. They're right in here, there's actually not, there's a gap. So if this is the option, the one of two options, REC would dictate this. It would be similar to what is there already. And there are a couple spots here where the lines do, I think there's one right here. There are a couple, there's one up here where the line does cross the 29. The applicant can speak a little bit more to this, but these are the two options. If a commercial entity was getting there and needed to hook in, from what I understand, this is their options to get to a pole. So it doesn't really change. Otherwise, I'm trying to think anything I might have left out. We do have all of the decommissioning plan. We have the landscaping plan, feasibility study. All of those were uploaded to the website, linked in the packet. Regarding, I did do a little homemade visual here.
Ligon, sorry, Ligon. Do you want to, should we address the zoning part first before we get into this?
Yeah, we can talk, what sense, the zoning?
Well, that's going to be the first, I think, consideration for
Since
the.
that's what we're looking at is the rezoning. Yes.
Sure. Well, I did just do a little bit of a visual summary, and we can talk about that next. But so the first item would be to consider this rezoning application and the corresponding condition to eliminate those by right uses. But otherwise, any questions for me? I've got a lot of things I can go over, but I know we've talked about this a lot. But any questions?
Okay, any questions for Legan about, specifically about the rezoning application?
I've got a comment about it.
Mhm.
So I just kind of have a little problem here of rezoning this to M1. We're talking about rezoning it to M1, and if it does get rezoned to M1, and the solar part doesn't go through, they're gonna have to about $55,000 rollback taxes, and they're gonna be taxed on that, and somehow it just doesn't set well with me that we're gonna rezone this without, their land is gonna be useless, because per all the conditions, they can't do anything else with it. We've said they can't do anything else with this land at all, except for have a solar farm on here. And if we say that we're not gonna have a solar farm on it, then we've rezoned their property, and it's no good to them. So that's where I sit with this.
Well, I would just say that the planning commission is just recommending. So it would have to be the board would have to rezone it and then deny the SUP. And I would say if you're apt to rezone it, then I would think you're apt to vote for the SUP as well. So I don't think that's really.
Then why is it the same
Right, right,
thing then?
right. I mean, so I wouldn't, from a planning commission perspective, I wouldn't worry about, I know that definitely, we've talked about that, and I think the board's aware of that, but I would just vote on it, based on your interpretation and opinion of what's been presented.
Once again, though, if we recommend it for approval, and it's approved, and the solar part doesn't get approved, then they've been rezoned to M1 with nothing, they can't do anything with the land.
But it's still, that would take,
Except for doing another solar farm.
it would be the board that would have to do that, and that would be the board have to rezone it, right? And
I
I
understand.
and I think they,
I'm just saying.
I think it's good to bring that
That's just
up.
the way I see how this
Right.
plays out right now.
Yeah, at this point,
Well,
let's move forward.
Well, wait, I got a question, Steve. I guess more of a legal question. So if the folks, if gets rezoned to M1, okay, and they owe the rollback taxes in it, and they say, well, can't use it for anything because it's M1 now, is it possible for those folks to come back into Ligon tomorrow and say, we would like to put this back where it was and not have to pay the rollback taxes?
I mean, it's possible, but I think the very easy solution sits right back here, I mean.
Well,
so,
I
yeah,
understand
yeah,
that,
I mean,
that they're gonna ultimately make the
Right,
decision.
right.
I'm just curious.
That's not what we
But Mr. Elliott, to answer your question, it could not be done simply by dropping by the office.
Oh, I
In
know
other
that.
words, we'd
It'd have to have a
another
public hearing, everything.
And all of those things, and, there are some things that could be negotiated with regard to that. Something else to remember is the county is not forcing this rezoning application. This is being requested by the landowner. So this is not a situation where the county is imposing a difficult choice on someone. The landowner himself is doing so.
So the answer to the question is that they can, if they're not approved for the solar place, they can come back and ask for rezoning back to A1.
They can, yes, they would have the right to do that. It may not be
Okay.
automatic, but they would have the right. It's like any other property. If you tried to upzone or just downzone any property, there's a format to go through, much like we're talking about right now, and that could be done. Now, the question with regard to the rollback taxes, sitting here, I think the answer is, once those taxes are paid to the county, those are the county's. But presumably, the landowner has considered that risk.
Okay, any other question on that topic before we see if we have any input from the applicant? All right, do we have the applicant, is he online on Zoom or? Yes, sir. Okay.
Mr. Sylvester, you want to say anything here? If you can hear us? Are they in there?
Either.
Let's see if we can get them.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I was trying to dial in on the phone, and for some reason it wasn't letting you guys hear me. But I'm just trying to work my my speakers again. How's this?
That's better. We can hear you now. Would you go ahead and identify yourself for the record, and then we'll see if you have any comments or can answer questions.
Sure. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. This is Kaiser Guardiola with Callan Renewables. I'm the vice president at EPC. I believe we met a couple weeks ago at the working session.
Okay, do you have anything that you would like to say ahead of time, or just want to answer questions?
No further comments on our end. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Were you able to hear the previous line of questions with Ligon?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, does anyone on the planning commission then have questions for the applicant? Okay, no questions then from us. Thank you, and that brings us to any public comment on this, on the rezoning portion, please. And again, 3 minutes if you would. Yes, sir, please come and identify yourself.
My name is Scott Bennett. A lot of you know me. I'm a retired naval officer, past post commander of the American Legion here in Madison. I'm on the board of directors for DSS and RRCS. I was a consultant for the Navy, for NASA, and I was also a science and technology advisor to Governor Jim Gilmore. I also designed the system to weld solar panels in a vacuum for solar racks. I think solar farms are a fantastic idea. They're the cleanest form of energy we have available to us. The stuff I heard or read in the newspaper said it would produce 38.5 megawatts. Is that correct?
16.
Okay. Madison County uses 202 megawatts worth of energy. So even 16 would be a great help. Now what that would do is reduce our energy bills in Madison County, also give us extra capacity in case we bring in industry and businesses. Now, Madison, out of 133 counties in the state of Virginia, is the top 100 in generating CO2 emissions. I guess our cows fart a lot, I don't know. But anyway, because this has no CO2 emissions, it's a very, very clean form of energy. Stuff available to the county for employment will be site work, concrete installation, piping, electrical, and maintenance. The problem, one of the major problems we have in this county is that 44% of our residents are either living paycheck to paycheck or below the poverty line. Our lowest demographic numbers are the ages of 18 to 24. And that's because there are no jobs. So either they graduate from high school and move out to find jobs, or they go to college and they don't come back. So we need to look at getting more jobs into this county. And I think the solar farm would be a great way to do that. At least it'll be a start. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm David Parrish, Madison County resident for 13 years. I don't know much about zoning or rezoning, and I don't know an awful lot about renewable energy, but I think that the last comment that was made about the jobs and everything is a disconnect. I don't see it. It's a non sequitur to me to say that that's gonna provide income or jobs for our local folks, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. But our property looks over, the property that's being rezoned. We're on, Orange Road, so we're just one property adjacent. We're now looking in the wintertime at the cornfield, if the corn's still there. As for us as a family, it's not really about not wanting to look at a solar field and the fact that we enjoy hearing the combines or the harvesters, but I just don't see this fitting into Madison County and as a county that we kind of moved into as a rural area. And so I think there are a lot of things that could be said about renewable energy and all of that. One of the concerns that I have is the fact that while that produces some energy, it doesn't really benefit our county in that sense, and it doesn't benefit me directly. And I would say that I'm strong enough against this that even if they fed me directly and I benefited personally, I would still say I don't want to see that over there, and I don't think it's a good idea. So that's really all I have to say about that. I could make some more comments, but I just want to let you know that we really don't want to look at that when the winter time comes and the trees are down. We now get to look out at the cornfield and see behind Yoder's Country Market, and I'm kind of disappointed that Stephen has come up like this, and I'm hoping that it'll get turned down. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, my name is Don McCowan. I'm with the Piedmont Environmental Council. I detailed in my letter of June 30th, PEC has a number of recommendations intended to improve the project, should you decide to approve it. But this evening, I'm going to limit my comments to the rezoning question and actually in concurrence with the staff report's concern, again, on the rezoning question. As we know, and as the previous discussion indicated, the current ordinance allows commercial solar by special use permit exclusively in the M1 district. And so while limiting commercial solar to the industrial district accurately reflects the industrial nature of such facilities, an unintended consequence may be to encourage the rezoning of ag or conservation parcels to accommodate this use, given the limited M1 acreage, industrial acreage in the county. And we've identified a number of potential problems, and I just want to run through those. Number one, rezoning to M1 permits a host of by right industrial uses in perpetuity, as well as others by special use permit that may be more impactful than a solar energy facility. So while in this case, Luke Callan has agreed to voluntarily proffer to eliminate those by right M1 uses, there's no guarantee that future commercial solar applicants will take that approach, especially given the financial incentive not to limit such uses. Number two, in requiring the M1 rezoning to precede the issuance of a special use permit, the possibility exists that the board may approve a rezoning to M1, but then turn around and deny the SUP for a solar energy facility. Again, the possibility exists. I understand timing-wise tonight, it's close in time, but this possibility, as written, does exist. The ordinance requires the submission of a number of submissions before the issuance of the special use permit. And those submissions are critical to the understanding and evaluation of the impact of such a facility. So it is foreseeable that those submissions might provide information that results in the denial of a special use permit, but the property could have already been rezoned at that point to M1 under the current ordinance. And with all due respect, I think just what just occurred, Ligon, I don't know if he had a big blockbuster bit of information, but you had some further analysis that you're about to provide, but we had to stop to proceed with the rezoning. And again, that's kind of what is foreseeable, that there could be some information that's submitted or provided after the rezoning has occurred that would affect the decision whether or not to approve the special use permit, but the rezoning would have already taken place. So we just believe it would be preferable that the ordinance require those required submissions from the applicant at least, to be submitted prior to a public hearing for the rezoning request. And again, we acknowledge Luke Callan in this case has done that. Finally, by requiring a change in the property's underlying zoning, the county's permitting process for commercial solar facilities makes it less likely that a property currently in ag, forest, or conservation will return to such use following a solar facility's decommissioning. Because it's now industrial and there are many other lucrative uses that could go on to that property. So therefore, we encourage the county to amend the ordinance to allow the commercial solar facilities via special use permit in other zoning districts rather than requiring a rezoning to M1. We believe doing so would provide the county and the public sufficient opportunity to evaluate a project's appropriateness via the special use permit process without the potential long-term implications associated with an M1 rezoning. Should the current process remain in place, we would just encourage the county to require all commercial solar applicants to provide the required submissions prior to the public hearing on the rezoning request as opposed to prior to the special use permit process. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I am Judy Mahanes. I'm a resident of the Torrance Mill, Rhoda area of the county. I am one of those people who graduated from high school and left, but 47 years later I came back. And my family's owned property in the county during all of that period. My interest in energy transmission started some years ago, and a lot of you are aware of it, when Dominion decided that it really needed to build these power lines to provide redundancy for the Pratt substation. And these lines were coming from all over, it seemed like. They were crossing my property. I freaked out. But one of their reasons for doing this, their stated reasons, I don't think it was their real reason, and that was unfair for me to say, but common sense does tell me that if there is more than one way to get something moved into an area, that's a little bit better than just having one way. If something happens to the one, you're stuck. So the redundancy idea does appeal to me. And my feeling about this is that when some people that own some land and decide, hey, this might be a good thing for a solar generating facility, when it's so close to the Pratt substation, it seems to me a no-brainer to jump on it. I just heard somebody say there are existing REC right-of-ways to that facility. In the case I was talking about earlier, a long time ago, they weren't even looking at any existing right-of-ways. So my hope is that you'll work out all these issues and figure out a way to make this work. To me, that property is sort of trapped between some fairly busy highways. It's not great location for farming. You don't want animals in there running around and getting out. Fencing would be expensive. Probably not big enough for a lot of equipment, but it's trapped. It's next to US 29. Seems to me business may be the way to go. So my hope is that you can get all this worked out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the rezoning? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, in that case.
My name is Bonnie Dixon. I live in Criglersville. I'm here tonight because I promised my son that I would come and observe and report back to him what happened. He's the marketing director for a company called Clean Energy USA in Delaware. And he really sells rooftop installations and not the big solar projects. Although we're familiar with them because we also are owners of inherited property in Arizona where they have something that looks similar to the picture that we were shown in the documents that were referenced. My feeling is having kind of an addiction to reading newspapers and do that every morning. One of the headlines I saw yesterday was that it may have been, get this, 125,000 years since we had a day that was as hot overall, if you look at the entire planet, And what happened yesterday on July 4th, that's something that we're all responsible for. And if there's any way that we can address this, we need to do it. Having said all that, one of the drawbacks is the way it looks. There's a picture that I laid my eyes on at the beginning of one of the documents that I actually did spend a lot of time today looking into. And it's pretty ugly. But, I mean, gosh, considering the alternatives, I think somebody needs to figure out how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good evening. My name is Erin Nichols. And I'm going to talk about the zoning really fast. First, I want to say, actually, on the way over here, Al and I were talking about it, that we feel strongly, like Mike suggested, that having the M1 zoning and then not going through with a special use permit, in our eyes, is also incredibly challenging, because we don't want our neighbors to have to shell out 55 grand and then also have to come back here and figure out that M1 zoning. And all of a sudden, they have this significant parcel with M1 zoning, and then what do we say? You have an Exhibit A in your packet, a document that's not signed and not dated by Luke Callan that says that they will forfeit all of their stuff. So that holds no water. But if I were you and somebody came in and said, hey, we did all this work and we tried to get M1, you'd probably be sympathetic to that. So I really would encourage the Planning Commission and the board to think about the zoning and how you can maybe word the rezoning of this particular property if it does not have the special use permit attached, to enable them to not be penalized or to be able to put it back to the zoning that they currently have, because I think we're all in agreement that that would be pretty terrible to have M1 and not the special use. I also wanted to just very quickly address some of the public comments, since we've been rolling through this for the last couple of years. Our electric bills in Madison will not go down. They are selling that electric. They've made that very clear. We all have the documentation for that. And then the jobs, yes, they will create jobs. They will be temporary, and it will have an economic impact that's pretty de minimis. They've also submitted that documentation. And I understand clean energy. We're not against clean energy. Neither is the Piedmont Environmental Council, but they don't want this rezoning. And he brings up many amazing points that, as I was reading his letter from the 30th, and the conclusion really hits it home, this is not appropriate zoning. Why have zoning laws? It's industrial next to residential. That's the bottom line. That's what you're putting in my backyard. Industrial next to residential. We've talked a lot about property rights here. I certainly understand that. I ask you again, as a resident of this county, what due diligence do you ask when people buy a property? I read the comp plan before we bought our property. Alan pulled that GIS. Because of what we do, we knew to do those things. We knew to look at the long-term vision of the county. There is nothing in the comp plan as it sits right now, or the discussions that you've had about the next 5 years for the county, where zoning this to industrial will solve problems that we're addressing in this county right now that are big needs, like jobs, like housing. We are not wanting for this utility in particular. So if you're gonna go ahead and fly in the face of the comp plan and rezone and ignore the zoning laws that we have in place, it should be for a darn good reason. And there is none that has been compelling enough to go ahead and make that case here. So again, I just wanted to talk about that this evening. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Other public comment? Okay, any other public comment? Thank you. All right, any discussion from the Planning Commission?
Steve, I don't know that I got any questions, but I maybe got a comment. And, you know, the applicant here clearly understands what's involved. Ligon has explained it to him. I think everybody's explained it to him. And they clearly understand what they're getting into here. There's no guarantee what's gonna happen behind us, there's no guarantee what's gonna happen here. But if these people are willing to move forward, knowing what the consequences are here and what's gonna happen here, I have a hard time saying that these people shouldn't have their property rezoned. I think they have property rights, and I think they have a right to have their piece of property rezoned. That's just my feeling.
Thank you. Faye?
Yes. I would have to say, and I hope I'm not offensive to anyone, I probably am going to be, and that's because I would not conceive that a group of folks who are responsible for making decisions for the betterment of all of Madison County, whether you directly can see it or not, whether you can directly benefit from it or not, that's what we have to do for the future as well, that anyone would be zoning a property for the express purpose of what we stated and then not vote for the project. I mean, if that's the case, then I hope they speak up. That's what I'm saying, is that if we would vote for I know we've had that mentioned, and I really hadn't thought that that would ever be an option, that if you voted to rezone it, that you wouldn't vote for the project. So right now, I'm going to watch and see about that. But I think I agree with Pete that they're willing to go through it. They need to make a change in their property for their future, their families, whatever. This is the path they've chosen, and I think they have a right to do that. I would hope I would have the same right for my property. I didn't get the same right for other property that I have to look at every day that I don't like in my property. So, we don't have any choices about that. But this is a benefit, and I'm all for energy and clean energy, and I don't think you're going to notice it at all. And, of course, if you're on Courthouse Mountain, I look down and see, when I ride up there to see friends, I look at Food Line Rooftop. I look at a whole lot of other things I don't like the looks of. I look at a piece of property next door that hasn't still been sold and is now being used, as he has a right to do, for storage for various and assorted things. I just go on past it. I look at the high school roof top that looks like rockets taking off, a couple of them. I have had that mentioned some, and friends have said, what is that? Now, I'm not disparaging, trying to be disparaging against Madison. That's what they did, and the school system approved that look. We have looks everywhere that we might not like. I think the facility, you get used to whatever is there, and I've had to look at a whole lot, even near me, that I haven't really liked, but I had no choice about. I am thinking that they should have the right to rezone it so that they can do something that they want to do that is going to be beneficial, that they see as a good project.
Thank you, Faye. Other comments?
Yeah, I got one. So, looking at the zoning map, I feel for anybody that, in particular Nichols, that you might have an M1 that could be adjacent to residential adjacent to M1. But if you look at the zoning map and you pick out any other M1 for the most part, except for a little bit that might be in the town area, they're all surrounded by A1s. And I have the personal opinion that even though it's adjacent to R1 on the backside, it's adjacent to 29, and 29, I can't think of a better area, the road that M1 would not be allowed, would be right there on 29, particularly a half a mile inside, and it's right on 29. And that has been stated in our comprehensive plan many times, too. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, just a couple quick comments then. First of all, kind of like Pete, I'm very reluctant to limit the property owner's rights more than they're already limited by the ordinances in existence. I understand that the rezoning may have a negative impact on the neighbors. That's almost always going to be the case. As Faye has pointed out several times in the past, if you look at the by right uses that are available for agriculture or B1. There are several of those which could potentially have even more significant negative impact. As I said, I think this is the right of the property owner who understands the consequences to use his property as he sees best. I do have, well, I had two. One's already been mentioned, but just to say it again, somebody's going to have a serious tax liability if the rezoning is approved without the SUP being approved. And the second is probably not something I'll have to worry about, but 35 or 45 years in the future, when this lease expires, we'll still have, as we've already been mentioning, an M1 with a single condition, so that unless someone puts another utility scale solar facility on the property, it cannot be used for anything else, even though the decommissioning plan talks about returning the land to its original use. To me, that seems like we've got an option missing here, and that's simply an opinion. It has no bearing actually on the rezoning request, but 45 years in the future, as they're saying, something's going to have to be done with that M1 zoned land. Any other discussion?
I'd like to say something else. I will mention this. I know I hear a lot about the years ahead, like 35 years, which is the option for this facility to produce energy. And all of, well, I'll finish this one first. A lawyer told me a long time ago, when I was working on my what I own to make a will, and the lawyer said, don't reach out of the grave. Don't reach too far out and put restrictions on your children that are going to hurt them greatly. They're not going to be where you are now. We don't know where they'll be 35 years from now, 20 years from now. Don't put too many restrictions on them, like holding on to land that you want to have in perpetuity just because you wanted it. 4 generations from now, and it would still be there? I don't think so. So, and that could have been arranged. So I keep thinking about that. How far out of the grave would I want to reach? And that would not be so far. The second thing, rezoning, we have done it many, many times. Many times. And if it's this egregious, we would not hesitate to rezone it back if somebody wanted it to, if they came to us with that application. That's the second thing. And the third thing was, so I don't want to reach too far out, okay? Things have changed in the 5 years since we did this ordinance dramatically about solar energy. Changed dramatically. When we were talking about it 5 years ago, the way you put the poles in the ground was very different than what they're telling us now they're going to be able to do. We don't know what's going to happen in 30 years. We hope we have a cure for cancer, I mean, we don't know. So I think we go too far out, and we just can't, I just don't think it's wise to do that. I think we need to look at the total environment and the total efforts that are coming here. And, I know what I wanted to say. Somebody mentioned about selling that. If I'm not correct about this, somebody needs to correct us. I thought that the energy created was going to go to the substation and be distributed, the word distribute, back to residents in the county. Whether it's sold or not is irrelevant to me. I thought it was going to be brought back into the county. If I'm not correct, please tell me and get us all straight right now. And I'd like to hear that from the company too, or the applicant. I know, I'm asking, whomever can answer that. If it's not going to be.
Hey.
Yes.
Yeah, so from a technical perspective, yes, the energy does go to wherever this substation lines are connected to, which is the greater the town of Madison County.
Okay.
Right. The count.
And REC is involved, just to further add to that, I am not amazed. I knew this would happen, and we've had really slowed time getting some of the information that we needed. REC, our own electric company that we're all a part of, that we're electing directors for right now, owns this land. They own what we get in our county. They own the lines out there. They own the right-of-way that goes across my farm. Small little pole, but they own it. And they come in there and they work on it. They have had a lot of control over how, like, for instance, a distribution over to our, carrying it over to Pratt's and all. And the company's been very upfront about the fact that that is REC's property. The company cannot own that. They cannot. They can produce the energy, but then they depend on the facility, the electric company, to take care of their end of it. And if REC is committed, which they have to doing this, then I have to trust my own company, of which I'm a part of. It's a co-op, so I have to trust them that this is going to, that they're going to hold up their end of it too. And if not, then we hold them accountable too. So those are kind of like the offsides of it. But getting back to the zoning, that leads to, they're tied, they really are. And I just hope that everybody makes the right decision if it is rezoned.
Okay. Any further comments?
I'll just say I've been probably more opposed to the rezoning than the actual, proposed solar. But, when I'm looking through the by right uses, there's just a lot of uses in M1 that are really consistent with what you would see on 29 already and in other areas. And, 91 acres is a whole lot to rezone to M1, which is unfortunate. But it's, certainly, and then you look at the comp plan, and I understand it doesn't create benefits in a lot of ways for the goals in the comprehensive plan, but if you look at the Route 29 corridor study, I think that's a little too broad off 29, but, this is directly adjacent. So it's a tough one.
I could say something else too about the historical perspective on why M1 was chosen to decide that we would put this into the ordinance, which the board supported 5 years ago. And part of that issue was, at that time, we didn't want to make it in agriculture or business because we felt, the committee that was working with me, felt that would just open up all our land. All of our land could be rezoned, could have a solar facility. Of course, there are all the restrictions about the closeness to the substation and all that. But we felt that if we did make it M1, that would restrict. We knew it would be for a long period of time. We knew it would be for at least 25, 30 years. And frankly, I am very pleased that the applicants have said, the owners have said that they will restrict it only to this particular project. So there is nothing else going to come there unless they don't get that. And then it will be something else because that restriction will be off. We can't hold it. And that's another thing, our lawyers. If it's rezoned M1 with that restriction, then does that tie them to solar, even if it's not approved? We would do that to people. That's the legal way of looking at it.
Remember, they're the ones who.
I understand that.
They're the ones who did it. So that means that they're the ones who are willing to.
And so does every.
Restriction.
I understand that, but would we, as people, really do that to someone?
You gotta follow
Yeah.
the application.
I mean, we can do that, but would we? And they know the risk, and I think they trust us to know that we would make a decision that would support their efforts. So in other words, you're saying that if it should be zoned M1, then the restriction about the only thing that can be used, that it can be used for solar is it, and they understand that. Okay.
Unless the subsequent planning commission or board of supervisors decides not to hold the applicant to their representation.
Yeah, and Faye, it's really no different than if we, let's say, give a special use permit to a business, and the business fails.
Yes.
It quite possibly could.
And, well, that's true.
That's not up to us.
That I'm not. I'm just thinking this is so much bigger
Well,
than anything like that. you know, we'll wait and see. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. Any other discussion, comment, et cetera? Okay, are we ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that case number RZ-07-23-12 be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval with the conditions that they have placed on this. It will only be allowed for solar, nothing else in this M1 zoning.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I guess we better do a show of hands on this. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. All opposed? All right, so looks like James Graves is opposed. Okay. All right, so case number RZ-07-23-12 will be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval with the condition, very specifically, that this M1 zone will be used only for a commercial solar energy facility. All other uses have been voluntarily eliminated. All right, thank you very much. Case number SU-07-23-13, Louth Callan Renewables has applied for a special use permit to develop a solar farm, AKA commercial solar energy facility, on a parcel in accordance with Articles 14-19-1, 14-19-2, and 14-19-3 of Madison County zoning ordinance. Before holding a public hearing on this special use permit request, the applicant's request to rezone the subject split zone property must be approved by the Board of Supervisors. The applicant has submitted a binding solar energy siting agreement containing numerous conditions, which includes but is not limited to site decommissioning, taxation, and capital payments. The subject 91.8 acre parcel does not contain a postal address, but is located on South Seminole Trail, US 29, and adjoins the parcel where Yoder's Country Market is located. In addition, the parcel is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 48-12C. All right. Regan, I know you've got a large packet to go through here.
Well, we've been talking about it for a while. I will probably just be easier for you to take questions.
Okay.
Of course, I will just show my homemade, I know we looked at the visual buffer, just to get an idea. Now, this is, we don't have the foliage. I mean, we have the leaves this time of year, so you can see number one, taken from here. I mean, you can just imagine with the buffer that with 1 and 2 from Yoder's parking lot, obviously from this angle, you're not going to see it, but from kind of this portion back here of the lot, you would at some elevation there, you would see the back of the panels. Then I went down across the street, just literally right across where the lines would cross. You can kind of just imagine if this buffer was across. I really think from that area, it would be concealed. They even gave us a visual sort of showing what that would look like. Then I've gone and looked at number 4 from the fairground. I really don't see that we would see it from 4. From this area, this is pretty heavily wooded. Maybe some areas, well, when you go down Fairground Road, you're buffered here. You can see number 5. Maybe from there at 5 and 6 with no leaves, it could be potential. But I still think it's, of course, I think there's a line right here, but with no leaves, I think you probably would have some ability to see it some from there. It's fairly well placed in that sense, and with the buffering plan. I can let Hannah talk a little more about the siting agreement. Like I said before, there's a lot of interplay between the two. I'll just sort of stress that these agreements are modeled after what's worked at other places. I think we've worked hard to put in all sort of insurances from decommissioning to acts of God to all sorts of things that it would have happened, that there's a scenario in which the county is protected bonding, you know, it's really pretty all encompassing. Any other questions for me, Hannon? If you have anything you want to add, since he worked so diligently on it as well with me, you know, he's welcome to.
Since the site plan is kind of subsequent to the application, if you want us to, maybe we'll discuss questions about the application itself, the process first, and then look at the site plan.
Yeah, well, we do have a site layout, but of course, if this special use is approved by the board, the next step would be the site plan. So they would come back, and that's really when, you know, we would you know, stormwater plans, erosion sediment plans would all be submitted then.
Okay. Yeah, and I do have a few questions, but let's see, does anyone else have questions about the application at this point? All right, well, I have kind of made a little checklist here. There were specific things required in the application. Feasibility study, checked off. The next thing mentioned is SCC approval. Have we got documentation of that? Not PGM, SCC approval is in the ordinance. This was brought up at the last workshop. I know because I brought it up.
Mr. Sylvester, on the State Corporation Commission approval for the project, I was I thought we talked about last time that this is being sold directly to REC. Is that correct? So I don't believe there is an application for the state agency.
They can connect to the electric grid without SCC approval.
Yes, this is Kaiser Guardiola, Booth Callan. I can confirm that we do not need that approval.
You do not need SCC approval. Okay, thank you. Well, let's see, we've got the cost-benefit analysis checked off. The amount does not exceed the 50% annual usage of the county. The viewshed analysis, and I think this is something that we did have quite a few questions on from the surrounding area. From 29, from Fairground Road, from adjacent landowners, yes, we've got a pretty good idea of what the viewshed looks like, especially with the buffer in place. Do we have viewshed analysis that shows us, for example, what it looks like from O'Neill's Road, or what it's going to look like from Courthouse Mountain, as Faye said, or any other slightly more distant locations, higher elevations? Yeah, that's the viewshed map that they showed us, yes, with well, to me at least, a questionable explanation. Do we have available somebody who can give us a little clearer idea of what this viewshed map is showing? At the workshop, we were not even able to establish where the sight lines were from, so he simply said they were at different points outside of the property.
Hi, this is Sebastian with Luke Callan. Looking, there should be 3 separate images for the viewshed.
Okay, I see additional images. Okay, it's a good start.
Okay, so go back to the first one, please. Looking. It's hard for me to see.
This is relatively nearby, I see.
This one right here, or this one right here?
The first one he was talking about. Okay. All right, that kind of matches the expectations. From nearby locations, although with the buffer in place, there's some areas there that are showing, if I remember, you said the kind of turquoise color is where it would be visible.
So this specific image would be from the viewpoint of Madison Tire. Anything in turquoise is viewable. So as you can see, a solid 97% of the solar array from Madison Tire is not viewable thanks to the buffer screen. Looking if you can scroll down. This would be from Route 29. Same thing, anything in turquoise, you would be able to see. This is from Route 29. And then the last image, please. This would be from Yoder's. This is the viewpoint from Yoder's.
So if you're sitting here, if I take the picture I showed, I mean, you're going to see these higher elevations here. So if you're here, then I take it that you're not going to be able to see it. You know, here, you know, you can't see it. It's a ground level, but if you get up here, you're going to be able to see it.
Okay,
Here, you know, and then you're up here, you can see it, a little higher elevation, I assume, up here. There's
That
Fairground
was my
Road.
understanding, that the turquoise is, would be locations where it's clearly visible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's pretty obvious if you go on Courthouse Mountain, you're gonna be able to see it. Because you're up so high, you're looking down, you're looking right down on it, so, there is places, and let's don't fool each other, that, well, they're gonna put these trees up and you're not gonna see it.
No.
Regardless what we do, there's gonna be little areas or little spots that you're gonna be able to see it. You know, I heard somebody mention O'Neill's Road, I live on O'Neill's Road, and I don't see no way possible I can see it from O'Neill's Road.
I drove down it the other day and I thought the same thing. I couldn't see it from anywhere on O'Neill's.
Could I say something, ask something? Now, the part, only of the 91 point whatever acres, I don't want to have to find it, that is going to be there, the only, 47 acres of it is going to be, have arrays on it?
60 or 61. isn't it?
How many acres of it is going to be covered with panels of the 91.8 acres? How much? 59. Miss,
It says that in here somewhere.
yeah, if I could just see that, where is that? So a little more than half of it's going to be 90, got to figure the math, but it's not the whole thing. So the majority, I mean, a lot of it's going to be, a third of it at least, if not a little bit more. I don't want to do the math right now. Math teacher can help. Well, it will just be that one part, the 50, the 60, whatever it is, acres. Yeah, I've read it several times. So I think that's to be considered also. It's not going to be the whole 91 acres. We're not covering, they're not covering 91 acres of with panels.
Okay. Any other questions, Danny?
Ones I've observed in North Carolina and South Carolina, where they're grassy areas, big, large grassy areas that they bush hog or actually mow with lawnmowers. So it's like Faye says, the whole thing's not gonna be one big solar panel. It's gonna be stretched out. And there's gonna be grassy areas and median areas in between them.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I got plenty, but
Yes,
I think,
well, yeah,
I
for
think
the
he was,
site plan, yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the newer material, which is the site plan, Brad.
Sure. The siting agreement, this is the latest iteration.
Siting agreement.
Right, lasted Friday afternoon. Just a couple things for everybody to note. The siting agreement would be between the county and South Seminole Solar LLC, so it wouldn't actually be with Luke Cowan. And that's likely done for many reasons. For them, tax purposes, Greater East to sell it, and to limit Luke Cowan's potential liability. We proposed a guarantee contract for Luke Cowan for South Seminole LLC. They weren't willing to do that. They said it would be a problem for them in terms of financing the project. The capital payment is $100,000 per year for the 45 years, in addition to the revenue sharing as laid out. I think it's Exhibit B of the siting agreement. It would, of course, require a decommissioning bond that would not allow any costs offset for salvage or recycled materials. They did agree to an additional insurance requirement to include pollution insurance. And they've agreed to make road repairs if there's any damage in the course of constructing it. The force majeure events are generally normal. I mean, when we talk about this, this is usually something that's out of control of everybody's hands, right? This is acts of war, acts of nature that are severe. The one that's a little bit different in this one, I think it's number 5, which is Roman numeral V, is that
Trying to find it.
if they lose their electricity supply for more than 10 days, which I take to mean their contract with Rappahannock Electric, then their obligations under the agreement could terminate at that point. So just point that out for everybody's awareness that that's in there. They see it as would be a catastrophic event for them financially and make it an impossibility to run the facility. But that is generally it in terms of either major items in there or new terms for you all to consider.
Any questions for Hannah?
So, when you talk about the 10 days of failure, basically, is that taken in consideration? Is that bad weather that makes that happen? Is that failure of equipment? What is that?
So, can you scroll up right there? So, Roman numeral 5, discontinuation of electricity supply for more than 10 days or unanticipated termination of a power purchase agreement without a replacement agreement within a reasonable time frame. So I take that to mean Rappahannock Electric would be essentially pulling out of whatever agreement they have with South Seminole Solar, Luth Callan, or any other successors in interest.
In that case, they are claiming that they would not have no liability. Does that mean that that time period would not be counted toward the necessary decommissioning or discontinuation of the project? I mean, there's a time period involved there too.
So that would mean that they would no longer have any obligations under the agreement, right, to include capital payment for running the facility, and then that would trigger essentially decommissioning of that.
That would trigger the okay. So the force majeure does not interfere with triggering the decommissioning procedure?
Correct.
Okay. You have other questions?
In general?
In general, yes.
I have a question about that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, the way I just now heard you, you said this would be that REC would have the right to terminate after 10 days.
No, this would be if something happened.
Right, that's what I mean.
Such as REC. This is a contract just between the county and this company.
That involves REC.
Right, but REC is obviously not a party to this.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
They're a party, I assume, to a separate contract.
They've got their own.
correct.
That's what I wanted to hear.
We have not seen that, any agreement between South Seminole or Luth Callan and REC. Only the correspondence that you all have seen in the back.
Now you added a little wrinkle to it again. So you're saying we're making this for REC,
No,
but you haven't seen it in an agreement with REC and Luth Callan?
correct. Only what's been provided in terms of,
Feasibility studies and all these things.
Well,
Okay.
wouldn't they be the ones that would really be caring about that?
yes,
So why are we putting it in?
this is a term that Luth Callan, South Seminole insisted on.
Okay. I mean, I don't even understand that would ever happen, but, I mean, other than something that we all might not survive. So, Okay.
Just out of curiosity while we're talking about this, the South Seminole Solar LLC, is that I'm curious about the association here. Is that considered the successor or the assignee or future leasee or whatever in our ordinance, or is that, what is their relationship to Louth Cowan?
I mean, my understanding is that it's a newly formed company owned by Louth Cowan.
They're owned directly by them?
Yes.
So it's like a subsidiary. Now, I don't.
They're free to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
It's a special project entity. So it's a company that owns all the assets related to the solar project. So it's a way for us to operate the project on its own.
You did this for financing purposes, correct?
Not necessarily, but that could be a part of it.
I guess my question
It's the entire LLC as a whole is owned by LCR, Louth County.
All right, my question then becomes, the application for the special use permit is in one name, and the solar facility siting agreement is with a different company, different name. That seems a little bit out to me. I understand that they have financial reasons for doing it, but I would wonder if that, since the siting agreement is more or less for the special use application use, and we've got a different company making the application, is there any legal problem with that?
I would just say that,
The plan commission is considering the special use permit. Hannah or Greg can obviously chime in, but the siting agreement would be, if we get to this point, would be between the board and Louth Cowan. So the plan commission is not particularly voting directly on the siting agreement. That would be the board. I would just consider it a signee. I mean, our documents all through it say assignee or assignee or assignee, and if they get to this point, this is their assignee is a subsidiary of Louth Cowan. Vis-a-vis, it's them. I don't particularly know why they always do this. This is very common, but that's kind of my take on it in our conversation. So,
Okay, so you don't foresee any problem downstream from this?
whoever operates this site is going to have to follow the site agreement. Period. I mean, that's I think that's pretty well established.
The problem would be that you've got a limited liability company now that you're dealing with, that you've signed a contract with, and if there's a problem or breach that is not either covered by insurance, which is required, or covered by the decommissioning bond, then who are you left in terms of seeking a remedy from? So now it's the newly formed South Seminole LLC as opposed to Louth Cowan Renewables.
Okay, so what I would see potentially there then, there's going to be required maintenance of the property, of the equipment. We have very little input about that, and certainly nothing in writing about any of that. So this new LLC is the company responsible for that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mike, I know you said you had some.
3 pages of stuff.
Okay, well.
But we're feeling pretty good about everything that's been covered, right? Everything seems to be in order. All bases have been looked at, boxes have been checked, and things look okay.
Are you asking me if I have concerns?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the ones I've highlighted are the ones that I have just in terms of a risk perspective, right? I mean, it's what this contract is essentially doing is who's going to bear the risk of these things. And so discontinuation of electricity supply for more than 10 days, and part of this is me being unsophisticated in the world of solar, is I'm not sure what that event would be. How common is that? Certainly, they want it to be a provision in here, so they're concerned about it. So I don't want to just hand wave at it and say, oh, that'll never happen. And then the idea that you're now contracting with an LLC as opposed to what was the applicant, Luth Callan, without them saying, yes, we'll be willing to indemnify anything that South Seminole Solar LLC incurs. Those are my concerns. As far as the rest of the siting agreement, I think it's pretty strong. I think they've made some real concessions in terms of the road repair, the insurance, the impervious surfaces for solar. I mean, they've moved. I don't want to act like they haven't, but are there still concerns that I have as I'm advising the board? Yes.
Yeah, I read through all that stuff, and road repairs, that's on 29. I wasn't worried about that. The erosion control, DEQ is going to take care of all that. There was a lot of stuff I thought was going to be self-done. I just wanted to make sure the county was covered, on anything.
Sounds like the county is the one that's liable when it comes down to it.
Well, the planning commission, we're not voting on the siting agreement. We have no control there. We're voting on the special use permit, and the board of supervisors will decide if the siting agreement meets what he needs it to meet. If I understand correctly.
And one other question about when we're talking about the money part of this liability. Yes. So when will we have in place we're saying that this might happen down the road.
Correct. There's
Nothing at the beginning. So somebody's already paid in money for decommissioning or whatever. Am I correct? No, not yet?
No.
Not now, but I mean when this is all.
So there's also no obligation for them to develop the property.
Right.
I mean, they could decide this isn't tenable. We have these agreements, we have the rezoning, but we don't want to do it. I mean, they have the right to make that call, and then you wouldn't have a solar field, you wouldn't have the income from it.
But that's on the applicant.
Correct.
Because we haven't put anything into it yet, really, except this, as a county.
Correct.
So, okay. But I'm thinking down the road, I don't know where we got off on this. I'm in a different place now than you all must be, so.
But I think we're looking at the agreement, special use conditions, but we always know that, really the heavy lifting and the engineering, reviewing those bonds, the opportunity would be at the next phase, the site plan. And the special use commissions talk about that, that's that interplay that, this next step to review this and to double check things is very much in play here.
Okay, Ligon, so yes, can you kind of, in a nutshell, say how many other businesses do you think are going to give county tax revenue of starting out at $130,000 a year?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't check with Brian, but there's a large industrial site down the road, that it would be a higher paying taxes in terms of property, and when you add in the capital payments, it would be more than what that entity pays based on the assessment on the building and land. Now, that one entity probably also pays machinery and tool taxes way up there. So, but just strictly on a revenue perspective, it would be probably one of the top 10 productive as far as that goes properties in the county, and that's the whole rationale behind the capital payment. Is that it does not require a lot of, once it's up and running and it's established. I think our conversation with the folks at Louisa that we were on a conference call with, they did have one that had some stormwater issues, but they got that taken care of. And I know that I'm not saying there aren't horror stories out there, and I think that PEC has, it's a construction project, things can go wrong. There can be issues, but my impression from talking, I know we talked to Buckingham and talked to, not a lot, it's anecdotal, but they really don't seem to be a lot of legwork for the county once they're up and operating. So.
So it seems to be pretty good for the county.
I mean, it's revenue-wise, I don't think there's any question, it's.
So if we can kind of get past the awful way that it might look to some people, I mean, that seems to be one of the biggies, right?
Sure.
I think we've all seen solar panels.
Yep.
Okay, any other comment along those lines? All right, getting to some simpler things. Assuming this comes into being, we have the facility in place. Things are a little bit vague about, I know they've told us, okay, we're going to talk to the Beekeepers Association or something like that. We're going to have maybe sheep, maybe something like that. We're going to have native pollinators. Okay, these are all things that have been verbally stated. We have none of that anywhere in writing anywhere. Also, I think in the last workshop, they said, really, they won't have anyone here on a permanent basis. So, I mean, who's going to be inspecting the solar panels? Who's going to keep track of what's going on? I guess maybe that's a question for the applicant.
Right. Well, I will, as far as some of those other items that aren't, and again, this siting agreement is consistent with what other communities. It doesn't say we couldn't have added those, but I do think it's something that when we get down to the development and the site plan, that we could flush out and add some things. You know, and I think they want to do those things when it comes to pollinators or whatnot.
Right.
So, but as far as the other question, if they want to answer that, then that's, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer the sort of how we're going to be monitoring the site. So we do have an operations and maintenance plan for this project, right? So we're 100% going to be incentivized to make sure it remains operational every single day for the next 25, 30, 40 years, however many long years that we're going to be planning on operating this site. And then the beauty of these solar facilities is that we do have remote access to all of the inverters, basically the entire facility. We can monitor the energy going out. We can monitor every little piece of equipment that's on site that's installed. And there's really no need for a full-time dedicated personnel to be on site. And then if anything goes wrong, we can turn off the site, remotely operate it, and then we do have the capabilities to do a truck roll for maintenance purposes.
Okay, so you're remote monitoring, you have the ability, can you turn off portions of the array or the whole array?
We can turn off the whole array, we can turn off portions of the array, we can turn it back on remotely. We basically monitor the site, control the site remotely from our operations and maintenance team.
Mm-hmm. What kind of, in the event of a maintenance issue, you say you can roll a truck, so what kind of time period are we looking at there?
It depends on the severity. It could be as quick as 24-hour turnaround. If it's not a severe, like let's say the whole site, we have maybe 2% of the site that's down, we'll probably address that in between 24 to 72 hours.
Mm-hmm. In the event of let's say a more major event, recently there was one in the news, hailstorm damage basically took out most of a facility out, I think it was North Dakota. What kind of, how can I say this? If you have such an event, do you have the capacity to get in replace those damaged panels in a timely manner. That's not decommissioning, it's just doing repairs.
Yeah, I think that's, most likely going to be an insurance event at that point. So we'll, I don't necessarily see, can foresee the future right now, but again, we're going to be 100% incentivized to make sure that the facility that's generating revenue is going to be up and running, as much as possible.
Thank you. Any other
Thank you.
comments, questions, discussion? Okay. Do we have public comment at this stage? Yes, sir.
All right. I'm Alan Nichols, live to be parcel to the south of the subject. I hear a lot of folks saying that you've got everything together, but there are a lot of things missing here. There's a number of sections of the ordinance that are not sufficiently addressed. If you look at your ordinance, it's 1419-3B. I can read it to you, but it talks about the buffer around the site. And Ligon had the site plan pulled up a little while ago that showed the proposed buffer areas. And I can't help but notice that there's no buffer adjacent to the residential district. We've been down this road before.
That is an old picture. That's my fault. This is the actual plan that was, I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is the actual plan.
Okay.
So we have.
So go to the section adjacent to my property and there's no buffer. None. My trees are supposed to be my buffer. Well, if I want to move my trees, put pasture in. What if I want to thin it? I'm responsible for providing their buffer, because that's not what the ordinance says, and it also violates the statement of intent with the M1 zoning. Also, the view shed analysis that was provided, and we spoke about this briefly the last time I was in here, but I feel like it's grossly insufficient because the method that seems to have been used was they took their photographer or analyst, however they do the analysis there, and they stood at a couple of the neighbor sites and they looked out as opposed to analyzing the view from the county in. If we go back to August or maybe September 2 years ago, whenever we started these public hearing processes, Piedmont Environmental provided a wonderful view shed analysis that encompassed a much larger part of the county. And although, yep, a lot of us can see a lot of things from a lot of places, I think that transparency is necessary and relevant. And you can see the site, a large portion of the site, from a lot more places than your view shed analysis would lead you to believe. Some of the key places in which you can see it from, and it's even revealed in the analysis here on the last slide down, is you can see it clearly from Food Lion, from Hoover Ridge, from the football stadium, from the middle school track, all these public areas that we all used to enjoy for outdoor spaces, that we're going to have to look at this industrial site that's here now. So the other part of an ordinance that I'd like to talk about, 1419-6, and it talks about the applicant bearing the cost to the county for increased staff time, attention to matters related to construction, maintenance, administration, and enforcement of requirements. Now, it's been brought up in here that, or the question has been raised, how are we going to do that? No one's given any answers. We don't have a checklist of we're going to inspect every this often. We're going to check to make sure that they are, that things are operating in a safe manner, that the setbacks are maintained against the streams that run through there. The siding agreement that's in place now doesn't seem to show any additional setback against the streams that are there. And I know that's not final, but those are things that we've talked about in here, and they've not been addressed by the applicant. So given that the, let's see here, I gotta check my notes. So given that the the documents have been slow, and the applicant has stated their intention to only do the minimum that is required of them, I would strongly suggest that the Planning Commission and the board get everything from the applicant in writing instead of relying on verbal commitments. Even the statements that have been in writing in these documents and in others that we've had previously on these proposals have used an awful lot of hedging statements. We're going to try to get someone to put sheep on there. We're going to seek to engage a beekeeper. They're going to put all these promises out in front of us with all this language where they can go, yeah, I picked up the phone once, I tried, it didn't happen. We're not doing it. And now you're going to engage, and we called them out on this about 2 months ago when we were in here. They have an LLC that they have formed for the purpose of putting the materials of this project in it. Their liability will not extend further than any assets within that piece of paper, that LLC. They are deliberately making it challenging to sue the applicant or the property owner should there be a violation of the terms. And if there is a violation of the terms, and you've approved this, and the millions of dollars that'll go into this thing, how quick are y'all gonna be to pull their special use permit? Or are you just gonna let it go because it's so much money and we've come this far? It seems like that's probably not gonna happen. So I think long and hard about how you're doing business here, because since the Planning Commission has decided it's okay to change A1 to M1 for the purpose of solar, you might get a lot more folks in here trying to do the same thing, so you better set a good precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
This comment is anything but technical. But just because of having conversations with my son and my interest in having this happen, I know that there are all kinds of things being discussed as far as ways to go about producing solar energy. Some are completely different than these panels. The designs are totally different. If you're living in a time when there's so much fluctuating around you, you really can't get too specific because it could change so quickly. And as far as people actually following through with things like planting things for pollinators, and oh my, the environmental community is so into this. I mean, people will do it for free. They will do it just because they want to see it happen. I know people like this, so I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Yeah, I think we have to have a little bit of humor here. So if these things are as ugly as you all are talking about it, put them in because I want to see them.
Make it a scenic attraction, right?
Yes.
Roadside.
Other public comment? Okay, any other public comment at all? Quick question, Legan. You know.
We have one person.
One more person? Okay, thank you.
Good day, y'all. My name is Roman Piedmont. I am a new resident in this county, but I visited here and been in and out for 4 or 5 decades. My wife and I chose Madison County because it was the rural, the zoning. It looked like it would be a peaceful place to retire. I am all for solar, but I also know that energy companies of all sorts find all sorts of ways to get around their obligations. And this LLC thing, I've seen pulled too many times. I'm a retired farmer. I've been in other businesses. And I just think, I just don't hear enough substance to feel safe about it right now. I would like to see a better program. And as far as sheep goes, to keep the grass down, I think it has some happy sheep. They don't do well in the hot weather.
It's,
And you put all those solar panels up, you're gonna create a lot of heat. So this whole thing maybe needs to be thought out just a little bit better before proceeding to vote on it. Because if all you wanna do is put solar panels there, do it right. Do it somehow. I agree with it. Michael Yoder, I mean, it's not the best farmland, something needs to happen there. But it needs to be a little bit more open. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, any other public comment? Okay, Ligon, we did have that one question. Do we have the entire perimeter now, they have agreed to the vegetative buffer? Because we keep coming back to.
Yeah, I mean, this plan, and maybe Mr. Sylvester can talk to it, it shows the entire perimeter, and they would not be able to use, I mean, if there's some trees on their property, then obviously they could
Right.
use that as a buffer. You're gonna get a site plan for this. I mean, the ordinance is clear. You've got to buffer the whole thing.
All the way around.
And I did use an old picture, that was from a while ago, so I apologize for that. But yes, it will be required to be buffered. That's not a question.
Okay. Any?
Is that a buffer and no fence, or a fence as well?
There's both.
both. They have to have fence for security.
Well, just making.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I just have a general comment. So this is the second time, guys, that the rezoning has come before us. And last time I thought I was going to vote against it, and I didn't. And then I voted for the rezoning, and I regretted it. I had another opportunity. I thought I was going to vote against it, and I voted for it again. And mostly that is due to, I firmly believe in people's right to use their land to make a living in a responsible way, and not being too constrictive of that. The special use permit is a whole other thing. That is asking for a special request to do something that's out of the ordinary. The risk versus reward of this is a loser. I just don't see it.
Any other comment?
Yes, Steve, I'd like to make a comment. You know, is this the best place that this possibly could go? Maybe not, but we're close to the transformer station there. And it doesn't matter where you want to put it, it's always not in my backyard. It don't matter if we were putting it in Etland, next to Carty, or wherever we put it, it's still not in my backyard. The way I look at this thing is, this is one of the biggest money-raising revenues that this county is gonna see for this piece of property. We all know that the board worked really hard this year to make cuts and do everything they could to hold our taxes down. I got a real soft spot in my heart for all of these elderly people out here that's struggling to make it, and we gotta raise their taxes. The board can't help it. When the price of stuff goes up, they've gotta do something. Here's a big offset to help this county and help the elder people in this county. You know, there could be a whole lot worse that could happen there that could put a lot of pressure on our schools, our fire, our rescue squad. And in my opinion, this brings good revenue to the county. It helps from raising taxes. And I just see this thing being good for the county. And Nathan, we disagreed before, we'll disagree again, but that's just the way it is. I see this thing being good for the county and helping in the taxes.
You want to say something?
I do.
Okay.
I'm going to say it. This reminds me, I'm probably the oldest one here, so I'll take, no, it hasn't. I will take responsibility for what I say. Having lived a long time and watched a whole lot of things go sideways and whatever, with best intentions. If you don't like blue, you're going to hate everything about blue, the color blue. Or if you don't like green, you're probably never going to like anything that's green. And you won't buy a green car or wear a green dress, or et cetera, et cetera. So if you don't like a solar facility anywhere, you're not going to like this one. That's the bottom line. It wouldn't matter where. I think you're right. It wouldn't matter where it would be. I don't know that there's any best place for anything. I was over the valley this weekend, or a whole week, talk about truck stops, talk about things that I don't want in my backyard for sure. I saw some really ugly things over there, and a lot of, I say ugly, really huge. We have them in Culpeper. We know some of those things along 29. I think, the problem is if you have yourself set against not liking a solar facility, then you're not going to do it. And I think that is not, I wish that we were better able to have open minds. As I said earlier, I'd hate to think that we would treat someone who comes to us with a project this big and this beneficial, my opinion, beneficial. I wish we would just be able to open our minds and look at it from a total perspective like we all have to do all the time, every time we vote for anything. So blue is blue, green is green, solar facility is solar facility. And I'm sorry that we decide we don't like it just because we don't like it. And I think that that's just the way it is right now until I'm proven otherwise.
Okay. Other comment?
And Steve, I will say that when we did the solar ordinance, we worked really hard on this to try to create something that would protect the county and help the county. And if we're gonna put an ordinance out there and say, look, you come meet our ordinance and we're gonna work with you. If we're gonna put an ordinance out there and then someone comes and makes a real effort to try to meet our ordinance, and they meet our ordinance, and then we say, no, we don't want this or whatever, I don't know, well, maybe we just say, we don't want solar, stay away.
Other comments? Are we at the point where we can make a motion? Not at that point yet.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that case number SU-07-23-13 be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Again, I guess let's do this by show of hands. All in favor, raise your hand. 4, okay. All opposed? Okay, so we've got Nathan and James opposed. Okay, thank you. Any other items from the Planning Commission or the public at this time before we move on?
Can I make one thing?
Yes.
If it's just open, as for our meeting schedule moving forward, I propose a little summer break. We could, our hearings that we talked about last time, we talked about the upcoming hearings. I'll just go to we've got the site plan, the little SUP for office. That's going to be a rezoning for an office. They're going to go ahead and rezone that. That was on 29 South, you might recall, Oak Grove Mennonite Church site plan, and then Country View Homes, Al Ash. I think we can push those all to September 6th. Give you some time to get comments back from Health Department, VDOT. So I would just propose that we maybe do August 2nd, which would normally be our joint meeting. We could meet August 2nd to August 16th, which is our regular workshop. We could have a workshop August 2nd, August 16th, and then have hearing September 6th. Or we could just do August 16th and have everything. I mean, you have some familiarity with those projects. We could just wait and meet August 16th, or we could just determine at a later date if we want to meet August 2nd as well. But we won't need a joint meeting for August, regardless.
Is there anything lined up for a workshop on August 2nd?
On August?
That couldn't be?
No, I mean, it would be those ones we've already reviewed. So, if you want to defer to August 16th, we could, we'd have 3 weeks before September 6th. So, I mean, we could meet August 2nd and just determine if we need to meet on the 16th or not, just kind of up to y'all, or you can think about it, but I don't think we need to meet the next workshop for July.
Oh,
Yeah, we won't need to meet because they won't be in August. I just thought, maybe using that August meeting as August 2nd, which would normally be our joint meeting, maybe utilizing that as a workshop.
So when's the next comp plan meeting?
We're working remotely right now, if you saw the email, for a little bit,
Okay,
so.
okay. Anything else?
That's all. And I'll send an email around once we get it totally verified, but just no July workshop. And then we'll move forward to August 2nd and August 16th, but just kind of, we'll be in touch about.
See what it looks like.
Okay. All right.
Very good. Any other? All right, can I have a motion for adjournment? Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, because there's action boards that have to take action. I hear you want to have the August 2nd meeting, but not as a joint meeting.
Right now, tentatively, just be a workshop August 2nd. Right.
Okay, any other? All right, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, any second? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
All right. I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors portion of the meeting to order. As we do have a quorum, we do need to adopt an agenda. Anything we need to add to the agenda this evening? Mr. Weekly, anything?
Mr. Chairman, when you get to the,
Yeah.
you can do it as information. If you choose to cancel your joint meeting, you have to do so via vote.
We'll do that as information and correspondence, and we can go from there. Does that work?
Yes.
What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, is there any general public comment? General public comment. We have a bunch of people chiming in from online. Well, there you go. All right, going to first case number SU-07-23-11. Mr. Troy Weaver has applied for a special use permit to operate an automotive repair shop on 4.78 acre parcel which he owns. The subject parcel is zoned A1 agriculture, and in the zoning district, an automotive repair shop is allowable by special use permit. If approved, the applicant would construct a 60 by 60 metal framed building containing 3,600 square feet of interior floor area. This building would also contain a bathroom. The subject undeveloped parcel does not currently have a postal address, but it is located on Shelby Road 662 and is identified on Madison County tax map as 55-42A. Ligon, anything to add?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Just if you are inclined to approve, obviously with the conditions that were presented and with the possibility, if we can move this building up when we get to the building permit stage and see how, once he gets his drain fill installed, because we'll have to have that before he gets this building permit. Like was stated, if we could move the building up, but the parking in the rear, we'll do that. So that's something I would recommend.
And that was based on the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Anybody have comments or questions for Ligon?
No, I just have, Mr.
Please.
Chairman,
I wanted to say that I had contacted Mr. Weaver earlier in the week and had gone over some of the concerns that have been expressed, and he satisfactorily answered all of them, including his relationship with his neighbors, the buffer. He's very willing, accommodating, very professional. And incidentally, later this afternoon, I received a text from an auto dealer in Orange, who I know very well. This was unsolicited by both me and Mr. Weaver, who basically is endorsing Mr. Weaver's project and had nothing but good things to say about his character. And a man's character, reputation is everything. Supervisor Dawson was working with me on this, and he had a chance to go by and look at Mr. Weaver's current location, so I'll pass it off to Mr. Dawson.
His current location was just, it was clean. It matched the neighborhood and stuff like that, so thank you. I think the goal of all of this, just be good neighbors. So, thanks.
Other comments?
I got one thing I want to ask Mr. Weaver. So we advertised for the public that the building would be a 60 by 60, Mr. Weaver. And one of the conditions in there says not to exceed 65 by 65. I would rather change that back to 60 by 60 to conform to the advertisement. I mean, that's what we advertise. Is that a problem? I mean, that's 625 square feet less.
Yes, it was gonna be a 60 by 60.
It's gonna be 60 by 60.
I think we just started off with the 60 by 65, so we had enough area, but in reality, the shop is gonna be no more than 60 by 60.
I mean, legal, don't you agree? I think we should change that condition to read 60 by 60 as advertised. What do you think, Hannah? Okay. So if that's all right with you, when we get to this, depending on, when we get to the conditions, we're gonna change that.
The only other one that I think Mr. Cohen brought up that I did actually like a bunch, and I understand you park some cars inside the shop, understand that. I'm inclined to say that I agree with Nathan's comment on maybe going from 6 cars to 10 cars, even with the high turnover. That does give you a little bit of wiggle room, and then also it potentially makes you be compliant with ours if you become super busy. We know about lots of facilities that have numbers, and they're well over that. Enforcement's not one of our strong suits. I think 10. I personally think 10 is a very reasonable number, especially with the consideration that there's the potential that parking lot would be out back, and maybe that would give you a little bit of leeway on the whole thing. And we hope you stick to 6 because we know other places that have way more. Mostly junkyards that we're going after, but other than that, that's kind of where it is. Mr. Weaver, you have anything else to add you want to point out to us?
No, sir. I think you got it all.
All right. Anybody have any other questions for Mr. Weaver? All right. To the public. To the public. Is there any public comment? All right. Back to the board. What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number SU-07-23-11
Second.
as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second again.
Does that include Cardy's point on the 60 by 60
Yes, sir.
adjustment?
Yes, sir.
All right. Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Case number RZ-07-23-12. Luth Callan Renewables has applied to rezone a 91.8 acre split zone B1 business and A1 agricultural parcel to develop a solar farm, aka commercial solar energy facility. The subject parcel contains a roughly 11.6 acre portion along the entire frontage with US 29, which is zoned B1, and the balance of the parcel is zoned A1 agriculture. The request is to rezone the entire parcel to M1 limited industrial with conditions M1C. The application has submitted a rezoning condition that would eliminate all by right M1 uses for future consideration unless a subsequent public hearing is held for their inclusion. The subject 91.8 acre parcel does not contain a postal address, but is located on South Seminole Trail, US 29, and adjoins parcels where Yoder's Country Market is located. In addition, the parcel is identified on Madison County's tax map as 48-12C. Ligon?
I don't have a lot more. I think we've kind of
Yeah.
talked about this for a long time. But I do feel, regardless of what decision may go, and I know I always say two rational people might look at this and see two different things. I think that's fair enough. I do feel if the board is inclined to approve, I do feel as if the agreement and all the assurances, I can't speak to the LLC situation, but as far as what we have before you, what has occurred in other communities, I feel like we've got about every base covered possible, if this is the route, that the board ultimately wants to take. Having said that, yes, I do have some concerns about the M1, but overall, I think it does have merit, but, it's, we put a lot of hard work into it, and I guess I'll, to some degree, be happy once a decision is made, so.
Questions for Mr. Webb? Anybody have any direct questions for Mr. Webb? All right, let's go to Mr. Sylvester, who is from Luth Callan. Anything to add, Mr. Sylvester?
No further comment this time.
Are there any questions for Luth Callan from the board?
No, sir.
All right, to the public. Any public comment on the rezoning request in front of us?
I'll identify myself again. I'm Alan Nichols, property owner to the south of the subject. I'd like to start by just taking just a moment to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to me. I know I have a right to speak when I'm in here, but you guys have given me an awful lot of grace when I call you at home or catch you at work, and I certainly appreciate all of you, whatever the outcome is. As we sit here after nearly 2 years discussing this matter, I still end up with more questions than answers on this project. The real head scratcher on this one is why would a county want it? I know we talk about revenue in here, but it's less than 2% of the budget, and there seems to be an awful lot, a big lack of accountability when it comes to the applicant and the contractor that would be responsible for installing it and how they've set up their business structure there. The question I would ask of all of you is, do you have enough information tonight to make a decision? Has the applicant, over the course of multiple months, given you all the details you need? Are you clear-minded in how this project would be handled by the property owner, applicant, and county if approved? Do you feel confident that the county would be adequately protected through the established decommissioning plan to ensure that 25 to 35 years from now, we're not going to regret an approval of this process, of this project? I don't think those things are in place. At this time, I still see a special use permit that allows for power lines in front of Yoder's and or the school, a view shed that reveals not only will we be able to see from my property, but also from those attending the football games, track meets, or events at Hoover Ridge, or even just picking up groceries at Food Lion. And most certainly Yoder's will see nearly 40,000 solar panels that the applicant says will be improving our landscape. After 2 years of digging into this and reviewing solar project, I am certain that the industrial zoning is an appropriate zoning for the proposed use. However, anyone can see that industrial zoning is not appropriate adjacent to a residential district. This is the reason why we have zoning. With that understanding, our resolve is as strong as ever, and we would ask the board to deny the rezoning and the special use permit. Thank you all.
All right. Other public comment? Other public comment? All right. Back to the board. What would y'all like to do with the rezoning request?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment to make, sir. I must be missing something, but this seems to put the cart before the horse. Shouldn't we be really considering whether this project is viable and we would approve it before we would consider rezoning? I mean, I don't, question for Mr. Webb. Why was it presented in this fashion?
Well, this is what was applied for, and like I think Ms. Utz said before, when this was established back in 2018, the route to apply for a solar farm or commercial solar installation is to be an M1. We have very little M1 land in the county. And I do think that, you know, Faye had told me before that they kind of saw these projects as being, you know, hundreds of acres. They really didn't anticipate that maybe something of this size would come. So this is the process. I mean, I explain it very clearly to the applicants. This is what you'll have to do. I mean, you'll have to go to rezoning. Preferably, we'd like for you to take out all the M1 industrial uses. Then you'd have to sit and get a special use permit. So it's several hoops, and it's kind of complicated. I mean, I would prefer that it just simply be a special use permit in A1, but that's not the way the ordinance was designed. And, you know, that's okay, but, you know, once that was explained to the applicant, and they want to move forward, that's the way we move forward. So that's kind of how we've gotten here. That answer your question?
Sort of. In the way that I'm thinking, and all the unanswered questions with this entire project, hopefully not shooting at us, there's no way I could support a change in zoning before we considered the project in question. That's just my opinion, Mr. Chairman.
The only one, I'm looking at legal, and this is just where we're at right now. We could always make an approval to the zoning contingent upon the approval of the SUP. And that would take care of all of the concerns that, or some of the concerns that have been voiced this evening. And, well, as you've put it, the horse before the cart. And then it would also not put the Beals and the Weavers in jeopardy of having an M1 conditional zoned use without an SUP to operate. So that is always an option. Is that correct or not? Yeah, came to me like that.
It's kind of a blank slate in terms of what you can do. If the motion were to approve only upon the condition that the special use permit was approved, you could probably do that. Now, the other way to do it would be, and we had talked, you may recall, about separating the two issues. This was the very issue that we were looking to try to avoid. Now, another way to do it would be to defer a vote on the rezoning well, it gets you to the same place. So, yeah, you could do it that way.
I guess my interpretation is much simpler. If you're apt to rezone it, then I think you're signaling that you would also approve the special use permit. You have to have the rezoning before you can apply for the special use permit.
Go
So
ahead, please.
that would be my sort of,
I understand that, but we just saw the votes change.
it could, I mean,
So
but.
And if
I
this
mean-
is the policy that's in place, I just need to
I do.
understand.
I think I agree with the defer 100%. I don't agree with that that if you vote for one, then you shouldn't vote for the other. I don't think that you can bind us that way I just don't think that's the way it is. I do think the solution is make the rezoning contingent upon the passing of the special use permit. That avoids the potential for the land to be in M1 and rollback taxes to be owed to Madison County, and it doesn't jeopardize property rights that the Beals and the Weavers have currently, and that takes care of the issue. If you want to move into the special use permit, which frankly is the fruits of this, then that's the mechanism to go about it.
Mr. Jackson.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I mean, I'm trying to think of this as linearly as possible. My suspicion is that each of the board members knows how they're going to vote on each component of this. The inconsistent outcome that you are looking to avoid, I think, probably gets avoided depending on how the motion is made with regard to the rezoning. If there is, and I'm not trying to direct any vote anyway, but in any direction, if the rezoning passes, I cannot help but believe that related to that is that the special use permit would pass, because the only condition precedent that would, work in the special use permit is the only thing that would work in the condition, in the change zoning is the special use permit. So the two are kind of in that regard, kind of bundled for that reason. And then the other part of it, be very careful if you open the door to changing the zoning to M1 here and you do not pass this. Is the board comfortable with having just rezoned a fairly significant amount of land into M1?
That's why I go down the path of the conditional rezoning pending the approval of the special use permit. If you don't think that's the way to go, would the direction of the board be to go down and defer the vote on, I've never seen this, defer the vote on case RZ-07-23-12, and then let us talk about potentially the special use permit? Please.
I'm ready to talk about the rezoning right now.
We'll talk about the rezoning. Go ahead.
Well, I maintain, I'm against rezoning this. Okay, and here's why. I maintain that the parcel is zoned correctly now, as in B1 and A1. I thought it was quite singular that their proffer to us, that they have given up all by right uses in the M1 zone. They did not give up the special use permits possibility of applying for that in the M1 zone, right? They just gave up the by right uses, not the special right uses. And industrial is just not appropriate at this location. And the challenge is, we talk about to rezone back to A1, the issue of going back and making it agriculture or something later on, going through all the soil amendment needs and all to make that, to reverse that later on is just out of the question. Now, Conserve Virginia, which is the Commonwealth's mechanism for identifying the highest priority lands statewide for conservation, and the American Farmland Trust both identify this parcel as important farmland. And I do not want to see it otherwise. So, I mean, I'm against rezoning this property. It's just not the appropriate spot.
Who else had comments?
Are we still on rezoning?
Yeah, just rezoning.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
It can blur.
Okay. Well, I'm opposed to it as well. I pass a solar farm going to North Carolina every year, a couple times, and I've watched it for 4 or 5 years. The first couple of years, it looked pretty good. Last year, it looked pretty lousy. A lot of the Leland cypress had died, just sitting there. There was grass everywhere, not under the panel so much, but all around the area. This year, when I went about 2 weeks ago, it looked worse than it did in November. None of the dead trees had been removed. None of the grass had been mowed. I did read one article that one solar farm puts goats in to take care of the grass. And it would have helped seriously if they'd had it here. I don't think this solar farm goes with their comp plan as it is now. So I have issues with that. There are so many unknowns to me. I'm not going to be here 30 years from now, but what's going to happen 30, 40 years when it's decommissioned? Are the panels gonna be recycled? Are they gonna be thrown in the landfill? Are they just gonna be left laying there and nobody picks them up and does anything with them? There are so many unknowns because this has not been around long enough for anyone to really know what's gonna happen with these solar farms. I'm not against solar farms per se. I am against it in this location because I agree with Cardi. I think that is nice farmland. I think it ought to stay that way. Or maybe something more appropriate can go on the property. So I'm opposed to the rezoning.
Anybody else want to go? All right.
Dustin does.
Go ahead, please, Dustin.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm hands down opposed to the rezoning as well. Just, you know, the fear of the value of the neighboring properties even, you know, I mean, Cardi, I think you're exactly right. I think it is zoned the way it needs to be. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. I have been thinking about this, and I do think the two different cases run together. I've been hearing for 40 years now. Madison's going to have encroachment from Culpeper, Northern Virginia, and then from Ruckersville. And we've been watching it. And it's slowly coming, over 40 years now. I haven't seen that. I've watched the economy when 2008, all the construction up in Culpeper kind of ceased, and you saw those vacant buildings. Madison truly is something kind of special. We're different than Rappahannock County. We're certainly different than Greene County and Culpeper. This is not what I want to see in Madison County. I've thought about it long and hard. I've asked Mr. Nichols, what do you think is going to happen down the road when there's businesses there? And that goes with the comp plan. That goes through the Route 29 corridor study. We want to see these low-impact businesses. This is not. The trade-off, I just don't see. And that's even without getting into the money side of this. I appreciate Mr. Elliott's comment about diversifying the tax base and NIMBY. We hear it every week. Every week we hear NIMBY. And I'm all for business. But the amount of money we're talking about here over 40 years is trivial. And the effects on Madison County, watching some of, I'm not even going to say it's prime farmland, it's just farmland. And I value farmland as much as anybody in Madison County. This just isn't a good fit for Madison. Ms. Weaver back there at one of the last workshops says, we've been working on this for 5 years. We might have. There was emails today circulated about this. 5 years. Emails the day of the vote. We've deferred this multiple times. It's inappropriate. It's the wrong way to start an industry in Madison County. I don't particularly agree with all the environmental impact stuff. DEQ is miserable to deal with. They're going to take care of these things. Health department along with it. Employment, that's nil. This is a problem. It's unfortunate that we've got to go down this path. It would have been much, I agree, and I think it's something we need to look at pretty heavily, is how we go about this process from the zoning perspective before the SUP. I think it probably should be, frankly, the other way around, but here we are. I just don't think this is a good use for Madison County land, and that's just what it is. What would y'all like to do? Please, by all means, Mr. Jewett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I concur with all of the comments regarding the zoning from each member on the board, and I appreciate those comments. And my concern, in addition to the rezoning, which I do not approve of, is the fact that this particular project in and of itself had way too many uncertainties involved with it. And if there's proposals in the future, I would just caution the planner and any applicant that they need to do a lot better job putting something together before they come to us with something so far-reaching. And I'll conclude my comments there. Thank you.
I've got one more thing. Since we have it's bled over a little bit. I was trying to keep my comments just to rezoning, but I attended the Rappahannock River Basin Commission meeting last week or week before last, I forget, and they had a special segment during that meeting about solar. And the two things that I brought away from that was, number one, decommissioning is an emerging thing, okay? Nobody has got a handle on how that's going to play out, and it's an emerging thing. That was first and foremost. And the second was that technology, I think Ms. Dixon said it earlier, technology will cause obsolescence in the very near future. So those two big things, you know, which obsolescence would trigger decommission, you would think, and then, you know, so anyhow. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we deny the application for case number RZ-07-23-12.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, now where do we go?
That's it.
Information and correspondence.
I think before you do that, I think it would be appropriate to raise the second recommendation and indicate by vote that consideration of the special use permit is moot as a result of the rezoning denial. I think it's just a matter of putting it on.
Do we read the case and go through all of that and then get to that point?
I think you read the case. I don't know that you need to announce. I think you just do it as an announcement.
All right, here's an announcement. Case number SU-07-23-13, Luth Cowan Renewables has applied for a special use permit to develop a solar farm, aka a commercial solar energy facility on a parcel in accordance with Article 14-19-1, 14-19-2, and 14-19-3 of Madison County zoning ordinance. Before holding a public hearing on this special use permit, the applicants request rezone the subject split zoned property B1A1 must be approved by the Board of Supervisors. The applicant has submitted a binding solar facility siting agreement containing numerous conditions which include, but is not limited to, site deconstruction, taxation, and capital payments. The subject 91.8 acre parcel does not contain a postal address, but is located on South Seminole Trail, US 29, and adjoins the parcel where Yoder's Country Market is located. In addition, the parcel is identified on Madison County tax map as 48-12C. This is a moot point since the rezoning was denied, and I assume no further action will be taken. All right. Information and correspondence. The Planning Commission canceled their August joint meeting. What would you all like to do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we cancel our joint meeting with the Planning Commission on August 2nd.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, public comment. Public comment. I will, there's one that is worth it, and I hate to do it on kind of a down night. This is Sean Gregg's last meeting. He has served us exceedingly well in every way. I said at his retirement that we have been sued more than ever before with his guidance, but he has tried his hardest. Thank you very much, Sean Gregg. We can't tell you how much we appreciate it. What do y'all want to do now?
Move to adjourn.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
No, that was there when we got here.
And that's something I can read.
We need to go back. We obviously need to change.
Or do we? If we don't want it, then do we want to make it easy?
See how he likes that?
This conference is no longer being recorded.